Hey guys, alright, so I wanted to bring something new that I've been working on for at least about a week or so. I've been trying to perfect a very weird vampire list that I think is actually really cool. There's a lot of combos you can do in it, but let's just talk about the core right now, about what it is. Alright, so it's a vampire deck, but it's also a mono black aggro deck that also really tries to be graveyard, like boomerang stuff out of the graveyard and really drain life. That's the big thing, is it focuses on doing a lot of damage with its creatures and simultaneously draining life. And it comes out of this idea. Bloodghast does not like to stay in the graveyard. That's the basic thing that you know, is that landfall happens all the time and it constantly pops out of the graveyard. So what can you do to really make that better? Well, let's talk about how you can sack things all the time. Viscera Seer, unbeknownst to most people, is not just a Miller-a-Pod staple. It is, in fact, a creature that can be, is a vampire. You can sack it in Scry 1. Really, Scry, not super necessary in this deck. It's better in other aggro decks where you're trying to get like more burn. But the Scry is relatively helpful. Mostly it's just an infinite sack loop. And what can you get out of sacking a Bloodghast? Well, you can get things like when it goes to the graveyard effects. So like when Blood Artist or another creature dies, target player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Or Celestia Highborn. Whenever Celestia Highborn or vampire you control goes into the graveyard, you pay black, and then suddenly they lose 2 life and you gain 2 life. So if you have out a Blood Artist and a Celestia Highborn, you were looking at doing Bolt and gain, like basically Lightning Helix them for 1 mana every time you sack a Bloodghast. You can also sack everything else basically towards the end and get a lot of damage. And what this means is that you can go really aggressive with your little weenies, get them out to anywhere from 10 to 8 or lower, and then suddenly just sack everything you own and deal a ton of damage to that. I believe you can actually stack, if you sack everything simultaneously, I believe it does stack the Blood Artist triggers and the Celestia Highborn. Something that's kind of cool here is also Blasting Station. It's a little bit more expensive than Viscera Seer, but it allows you to tap it and do 1 damage to target creature or player. And you can stack that in a certain way, and you got to really know how to do the stack in this deck, just forewarning. You can stack that in certain ways so that when you are rebounding things, you end up getting the stack correctly, so you can untap it, tap it, untap it, tap it, untap it, tap it. So like, for example, a common thing that you might do, I have a couple of these in the sideboard, Immortal Servitude. If I did Immortal Servitude for 2, which is mostly what this deck does, and it allows me to get 3 creatures out of the graveyard, I could make it, stack it so that I have these 3 triggers on the stack, and then bring back the Celestia Highborn, the Blood Artist, and the Bloodghast. Sack the Bloodghast. And again, that means there's 3 untapped triggers coming up. Sack it, use one of the untapped triggers, untap it, sack another thing, use one of the untapped triggers, untap it, sack another thing, use one of the untapped triggers, sack something else. And then you might be draining them for like 5 each time you do that. It's a little bit ridiculous. Some other things that are on here that are just random to note is Gatekeeper Malachor, which can really help you out against mid-range decks. Take out like things like Tarmogoyf for 3 mana, while also having a vampire you can sack. Grey Merchant, because Grey Merchant is awesome and has just a super life swing in this deck. If you notice, pretty much everything with the exception of Blood Artist cost a crap ton of black, so your devotion is going to be really high. The next thing is Vampire Nighthawk as a 1 of. You probably could maybe go down 1 Grey Merchant or 1 Gatekeeper in order to make there more Nighthawks. Nighthawks are very, very good. I just like having Gatekeeper here because the Immortal Servitude in the sideboard. Of course, Lightning Bolt is the best removal spell in the game, plus it can work as burn to final the last couple points of damage. Tragic Slip really works well here because you're always sort of sacking something. Bloodghast is always going to the graveyard, or you can sack something with Viscera Seer or Blasting Station, making Tragic Slip a very normally morbid 1313. Whenever you're using it very early before you have this sort of sack engine set up, it's against things like Snapcaster Mage or like a elf, so it's really easy. And then also you're going to do basically the Jund, just normal amount of discard, which is 4 Inquisition, 3 Thought Seizes. That's just sort of the normal discard, and just do that. You'll notice the main deck is pretty simple for land-wise. You've got 1 Blood Crypt and 6 different fetch lands to grab that Blood Crypt. And that really helps out making sure that you get a Blood Gas that's always coming back from the graveyard. A Shrine only has a 3 of. I would like to do 4, but it's kind of hard when this deck is so greedy and black. And it's legendary, so you're never really going to need 2 at once, so 3 seems fine. 4 Swamp, 2 Orborg, because it's an Orborg. The only bad time of having an Orborg is when you have another one out and play, and it's not the worst thing in the world. And it makes all your Nykthos be able to be greedy. And it makes sure that your Dragon Skull Summits can come into play untapped. Lava Claw reaches as just a 2 of man land, because man lands are nice. And that's it. On the sideboard, we've got a couple interesting things. We've got Bubbling Cauldron, which I actually saw somewhere online as tech with zombies, and I thought it could probably work out here. It's another, again, sack engine, but it gains you life, so that's why it's in the sideboard. Unlike Blasting Station, which is a midboard, which can kill people, Bubbling Cauldron does not, and it's mostly used against like aggro decks. 2 Phyrexian Obliviator and 2 Vampire Nocturnus. I really don't know what's better. They're both really good, and they're the same amount of mana. So I don't really know. This Lord effect might be better. This Obliviator might be better. Remember, Nocturnus not only does 2+1, but also gives flying to everyone, including himself. So he's like generally a 5/1 with flying. Rakdos Charm, because if you're going to play black-red, Rakdos Charm is like the best sideboard tech and aggro deck can have. Immortal Servitude is going to be generally paid for 2 here. 2 allows you to bring back most of your deck here. It allows you to bring back Blood Artist, Bloodghast, Gatekeeper Malakir, Highborn, and that's it. But that's going to be a fair amount here. 4 different cards that you can bring back, most of which do the drain. So you can do something like go nuts with draining everything, and then bringing everything back with Immortal Servitude, and then just doing it again. And that comes in versus like the control matchups or like the matchups that have wipes. I was trying to think of something cool to do like Boros Charm-esque, and Immortal Servitude was the best thing I could think of. Killing Wave comes in against like aggro decks. And it comes in against aggro decks because it sort of is this catch-22. You don't really care if any of your creatures die. In fact, if your creatures die, it's not a big deal on your end at all. You could probably actually just go ahead and use Killing Wave for like 2 if you have a couple mana left over in order to get the most out of your Celestia Highborns if they're out. And then it forces them to either deal 2 damage for each creature they control, or losing all their creatures. So it could be really good for you. Thoughtseize again comes in against like combo decks, or even occasionally mid-range and control decks, in order to try to gain advantage, know what you're playing against, and not play into like board wipes or exile effects. So let's. Cool. Well, anyways, I guess this guy recognized me. Nice to meet you too, man. I guess I'll keep this. I have Viscera Seer for a turn 1 play, and then 2 Celestia Highborn. And I've got ways to play everything, including my Bolt, so I can't argue with it, you know? Start out at 17, which is better than my usual life total when I'm playing the Zoo as 14. So I don't necessarily mind. We'll put the Seer out there. The Seer will allow me to, nope, not this time, no Zoo here. The Seer will allow me to, at least get 9 damage, or 6 damage in. So, with the Celestial Highborns once they're out. Looks like we're going to probably play against a Delver deck. So again, I'm not going to let this Delver live. I'm going to go Tragic Slip it right now. And might as well swing for 1. Burning them out's a real possibility now, as we've got 2 Highborns, and he's already at such a low life total. And get ourselves a swamp. Go ahead and attack. Ain't no reason for me not to, and we'll use our entire mana by trying to put out Celestial Highborn. Now, this will get spell snared, yeah, like I assumed. But it's better than nothing. And remember, you can stack all the triggers, so that way you can go to sacrifice your Highborn, in response, sacrifice your Highborn, stuff like that, so that you can get something good out there. He's taking a lot of damage. I mean, that's what I'm laughing about right now. It's just a ton of damage. Realistically, on enters bolts. And you can do that so that way when it enters in response to the trigger, you can now you can get rid of my Highborn, which is probably the best thing he can get rid of, or he can get rid of the bolt if he wants. But he is at a pretty low life total now. He's at 9, I guess. Move to graveyard. No. Move to bottom of library. Gatekeeper Malachor is not the worst draw in the world. Put out a Viscerous Seer and swing with our 1 Viscerous Seer. Now then, he can play... I guess he can have mana backup for a... No, he's got nothing. Alright. Celestial Highborn is a cool card. In fact, let's do the attack phase first. Alright, so he's going to do nothing. We're just going to go ahead and try to put out this Celestial Highborn then. And if it gets countered, and that's just that. It doesn't get countered. I mean, it gets remanded, but it's not the worst counterspell in the world. This at least leaves me Lightning Bolt to kill any of his creatures if I see them. Didn't really get a chance to really knock stuff out of the park, you know, with the effects that we want to do. But he has to kind of be scared of everything I'm doing because I got removal and more gatekeepers and everything. So he can maybe get a 1/1 out there. Drawing all of his 4 vents. We're not. Yeah, we're gonna leave the removal for being, you know, removal. We got nothing to hide here anymore, anyways. This way, if he bolts down like our Viscerous Seer, we can sack it. Remand's again not being the worst. Like, I'd much rather have my cards out there, you know. So Vapor Snag, I think I will let happen. Saves him on 1 damage, rather than kill my own critter in response, you know. Just because, I mean, like, the only other thing I can do is do a lightning bolt, which right now is not worth it. I mean, he could do, on his turn, click me. But I've got so much removal, even if he clicks me and tries to get out my lightning bolt. Again, we're not hiding anything, so we might as well just go for Calestra Highborn. If he counters it, you know, he counters it, and that's that. So we got a Thoughtseize coming up, and I think I'm going to allow that to happen. I mean, I can draw a land, I suppose, but I mean, what does Thoughtseizing do here? Actually, it doesn't really accomplish anything, so I'm just going to go ahead and move that to the bottom. Thoughtseizing doesn't really accomplish anything. Yes, it could maybe strip a counterspell from him, but if he's going to have a creature, he might as well, you know, do his creature thing. Inquisition isn't a great target here, but I guess we'll Inquisition. Even if he clicks, I've got a bolt for the click. And I will check the top of my library. So Urbog, which gets me a mana, which gets me closer to Grey Merchant. So I guess, well, Grey Merchant really doesn't do very much here. I guess I will move it to the bottom of the library because I'd rather have something that attacks. 2 Scalding Tarns. Okay, so we know he doesn't have anything. We know he does not have anything anymore. So we're just going to go ahead and cast a Gatekeeper here. Gatekeeper attacks. It's better than nothing. Gatekeeper not always getting casted for his kicker cost. Lava Claw reaches. Alright, well that's better than none. See what he draw on. What'd you draw, buddy? Snapcaster on a bolt. Okay. So there's no... he's going to chuck the bolt at my face if I don't cast anything. But if I don't cast this Gatekeeper, it means I save myself removal on the Gatekeeper. So, I mean, it's fine holding it. It's, you know, yeah, what would be the best thing I could do? Hold it, like, not hold it, let it go die, and he uses the bolt and it saves me 3 damage. I'm not nearly dead enough to have that. So I'm just going to go ahead and name Gatekeeper here again, just so that way I have damage to put down. Plus, I can put down a Grey Merchant, which I think he does not know I have. Yeah, he doesn't know I have the Grey Merchant. He knows I have a Bolt. But, yeah, GG. That would have finished him off anyways, because then I would have attacked and been able to Grey Merchant. Alright, so what do you do against Tempo with this deck? Well, I don't exactly know, because I'm not the best at the world at this. But you probably do Killing Wave, sounds really cool. And Vampire Nocturnus sounds cool. Phyrexian Obliviator is cool. The difference here is that he's got tokens he can sack. So it's not the best thing in the world. Thoughtseizes aren't really that great against him. They're alright if you strip out a counterspell, but they're not like amazing. So taking out the Thoughtseizes seems alright. I'm fine with keeping 2 more in. I guess I could do Immortal Servitude if he like ends up being removal central. And for giggles, you know, like I guess this is probably fine. If I get a turn 1 Inquisition, it's fine. They're awful late game, but the
Immortal Servitudes aren't good late game either. Or they're great late game, but not good early game. I think I'm just going to put it in there just for fun. I mean, like, not like I'm trying to be extra serious. We got the Immortal Servitude, turn 1, which could have been something else. I don't even think I'm going to be able to do a turn 1 discard, because I've got a bunch of turn 1 plays anyways. Viscera Seer, Tragic Slip. He's mulliganing, which sucks for him, but hey, it happens, man. I mulligan all the time. I hope he keeps this. He's mulliganing again. Alright, well, that's fine. He's going to put out a turn 1 Delver of Secrets, which I assumed might happen. And I'm gladly going to slip it. He drank some potion, spilled a little bit extra on his laboratory floor, and slipped on it and died. He hit his head against the table. That's exactly what happens with Delver of Secrets. Sometimes he just does that. Now, fun fact, Bloodghast is immune to counterspells. You can counter a Bloodghast. Well, you can Cryptic it. Or you can remand it, which is the best thing you can do. But if you counter it, it doesn't really matter because it just comes back. He just doesn't like to stay dead. Now, I don't necessarily I'm going to go ahead and put out a Bloodghast. And either he's going to counter it. I guess the best thing to do here would be to put out the Lava Claw Reaches tapped. And I don't think he's going to counter the Bloodghast. Now, I should have waited for the Lava Claw. This is just me being stupid and not waiting for it. But it doesn't really matter. I still got backup. So if he bolts it, that's fine. Sort of screwing him up, because even though these guys aren't quote-unquote immune to counterspells, they sort of are immune to counterspells. We're just going to go ahead and right away put out a Viscera Seer. If he wants to mana leak it, I'm actually down with that. But this allows us to scry a little bit. He wants to do it on the Viscera Seer, which is fine. I think I'd actually prefer to leave up 2 life by being able to scry at least 1. Bolt, which is good enough that I think I'd rather have a creature, to be honest with you. I've got another Bolt, which is fine. And do I care enough to do another 2? I think I do. Because, like, these guys come back anyways, and I've got 2 different ways to bring it back. Vampire Nocturnus is definitely something I want to keep. So I'm going to go ahead and let everything die now. And I have enough mana, because I'll be able to tap these, get 4 mana out of it, and then have an extra to cast Vampire Nocturnus next turn, even without having to put down the Nikos. So I'm just going to do that right now. If he wants to counterspell, I suppose if I really wanted to play around Mana Leak, I could put out another one of these, get 4 more mana by taking away 2. That means I go down to 2 plus that's 6, 6, 7, which is enough to play Vampire Nocturnus and not really care about Mana Leak. Yeah, that's what I'm going to end up doing, because that sounds funner. Play around that Mana Leak. Boom. And the top is a swamp, so that is not going to do any of the pumps. So we're just going to lose the this now and just go for the attack. This does mean Vampire Nocturnus can get bolted, which kind of blows. I think he's trying to find a bolt here. But we're getting a swamp, which means at worst we know we can hold that for Bloodghasts. Immortal Servitude, we might be able to pay for getting Vampire Nocturnus back at some point. Dragon Skull Summit is not going to get what I want either. But we'll just go ahead and straight up attack. We're going to go ahead and just play the land here, since I'm going to draw a land next turn anyways. Just get all the misses with the Vampire Nocturnus. I've never missed this many times in a row with Vampire Nocturnus. But I suppose I do still have lethal on the board regardless. So we'll just do the swing, and we'll go ahead and yeah, I guess we can GG. Well, yeah, I wish could have hit with Vampire Nocturnus at some point in time. That would have been nasty, though. So Vampires is kind of a solid deck. It's definitely more fun than it is solid. But I think also my numbers might be totally wrong. But this idea of just constantly draining life and bringing back Bloodghast seems like a lot of fun. So, thanks for watching, guys. And remember to feed your vampires with blood.